Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so delighted to welcome today's guest, Alexander Wraith, who's currently starring in the CW's Naomi. And I was really interested in your process in terms of character development in regards to the amount of information that you knew about Dee when you first started working on this, because, with television, often scripts are coming very fast. They're still being written as you're shooting. But also in this instance, the show was picked up for a full season, which is a rare gift in television to know that you're going to get to tell the entire arc of a series. And so how much kind of depth did you have in terms of his story and knowing where it was going to go trajectory wise throughout the season versus details where you knew you were going to have to fill in the gaps and figure out certain aspects of him as a character as you went along?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, thank you for having me. Um, it, Honestly, it was just like an Ava DuVernay train, and you just get on it and go. You know, from the pilot, she's brilliant. She knows exactly what she wants. She has a great vision for things, and you kind of see what she's seeing. Once you spend time with her, she really explains things really well. Um, and she started giving me building blocks for D. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. All right. Oh, he wears like leather jackets. I'm like, all right, boots, you know, tattoo parlor. He's mysterious. And I was like, this is a really, really cool character. But you have on the other hand where you don't know much. Like I know what I know from the comic books because I went in, I researched, I still researched. Everyone on set's like, if you need to know anything, ask Alex. He'll tell you anything about that universe. But there's only a certain amount that you're given because like Jill and Ava don't want to lead you too much. They want you sort of knowing a certain amount so you can kind of convey that. Because if you know too much, sometimes it can lead the actors, and the delivery can be different.
And you were talking a little bit about his outfits that he wears, and very frequently, at least in the first couple of episodes that I've seen so far, you're dressed all in black, and he comes across as someone who really tries to keep himself to himself. And did you see the costumes that he was wearing as a character as being part of that, just trying to avoid people really asking too many questions and trying to just put his head down a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I see it in many different ways. I the outfits are really dope. I mean, there's he's always in black, so I have like a giant closet of black. I mean, I'm wearing black now, which I had a shirt on before that wasn't. It was tan. I'm like, let me put the shirt on just for this one. But I also see in a sense of it's kind of his armor, the leather and like the boots, and like those are his like war boots, because he's a Thanagarian. And Thanagarians are basically warriors. They're like Spartans, so it's always kind of like the leather, heavy leather boots, and the wrist straps and all that. But once you put that gear on and you do the hair, the tattoos, got like full tattoos, and a neck tattoo, you start to really walk into his shoes and kind of see the posture change, and you know um, you start to feel it, you know.
And I love that you're mentioning the posture there, because there's a real kind of like poise and almost stillness and also restraint in him as well. Was that very much what you were saying about kind of like once you put the outfits on and you put all the external details that you really found the physicality of him as a character in that regard?
Yeah, I've never played a character like this. I've never. I mean, I've done different characters and I've trained for different things, but this kind of came. It just kind of came organically. It was weird. It was like I started walking and looking around, and it's like this something took over me. I don't know what it was, but it looks cool on camera, I guess, right? The delivery's nice, so uh, I guess because I've done so much research, you really see his poise. He's supposed to be like this barbarian Thanagarian. They're all crazy. I mean, they go to planets, they ravage planets, and just like bounce. But he's different. He's Zen. So in order for him to become Zen, you have to learn that through meditation, to try to acquire peace, isolation, and I guess that's in a sense how I started to pick apart and put together his demeanor,
And it's so interesting that you're talking about that journey to becoming more zen and a lot of the things that he does, because he also talks about anxiety and things that he does. Sometimes I need to just do deep breathing to push through my anxiety. So we're even getting little flickers and little hints of that side of him as well. And so how did you kind of set about really discovering and exploring the side of him that isn't always in that completely zen place, but the way that he's able to take himself there?
um Again, just putting your, so if you think of a guy who's at war, right? Warriors and sort of these kind of gladiator-esque people, fighters as well, they're in this heightened state of combat and I guess situations. So when they get out of it, then everything drops, their endorphins drop, and they either have situations where they can't deal with certain things, right? And I said, okay, what would I do if I was in that situation? So and basically, I started coming up with steps of how to meditate and to be calm and to put yourself in that sort of moment where you're like about to flip out, but then you just sort of calm down and you go into it, and you just kind of release and you're like, everything's going to be fine. Just relax, so it's that, and then you really feel it.
Yeah. And you're bringing up there, heightened situations that your character's been through. And it's interesting hearing Ava and Jill start to talk about the series a little bit and the way that it is a story that's telling these heightened elements. There's cosmic elements, there's supernatural elements, and yet that it's important for the show to feel really grounded through its characters. And was that something that you really felt, particularly, the way that you're talking about your character now, where there's a lot of very heightened experiences that he's had, but it was important to just always ground everything through character? And even though developing backstory for him, there's really heightened scenarios that you're looking at that inform his experience, but really distilling it down to, well, what's the day-to-day emotion of that?
Yeah, Ava did an amazing job with designing everything. I mean, she's just so creative. So I can't describe to you her energy just kind of takes you, So it was amazing to have her on set for the pilot and just get that core base down and have taking that seed and then planning it to make it grow. But the acting in it with everyone else on the show is just amazing. They're just really good actors. And that makes a huge difference, especially when it's grounded. I mean, you have a superhero show, a lot of the movies and the shows, depending on what, can kind of feel a little campy in a sense. And they've gone away from that, like in the Marvel universe. They're pretty rooted, and I think this show is like that. It's very rooted. It's like, okay, fine, there may be superheroes. Yeah, there may be superheroes. That's how everyone thinks about it. But life goes on, and here's like real life situations. Like Naomi has to deal with her friends and her situations and growing up and her parents and some two weird dudes in town, and then all of a sudden Superman comes in town. And that's huge. That's like a huge thing. It's in a lot of the other shows, a lot of crazy stuff's happening, but this is more grounded in a sense where it's kind of like real world. Like if it did happen in the real world, I believe that's the way that it would take place. And that's the one thing that Jill and Ava did a marvelous job with, was just conveying that. And I think it's going to make the audience become invested in it,
And I did want to talk about working with Casey Walfall, who plays the titular character of Naomi, because there's such a kinship between your characters. But the interesting aspect of it when they first come together in the series is it's very clear that your character has had this kind of like long connectivity that he's known about, but this is the first time that she's learning about it. And so what were the interesting dynamics in terms of figuring out what does this relationship look like and as at its foundation, so that you then could take it and gradually build on that connectivity from both sides throughout the rest of the season?
Well, first of all, Casey's amazing. I've never met anybody like her ever. I mean, the girl is a genius. Like the amount of pressure and work that she has to do, and she does it stellar. She's stellar at it. It's unbelievable. I mean, she gets a script. She's like, yeah, all right, let's go. What do you want to do? I'm like, oh God, man, it takes me like a week to get something in my mind. She's just like, boom, boom, scene after scene, school, and this and that, and physical stuff. So Casey's Naomi. Literally, she's like a superhuman human. She's amazing. But working to have those characters come together and kind of blossom was very organic, because we were like, all right, should we just go with it? And that goes with the writing. The writing really plays a part in that. And the directing, we had some amazing directors. Like Demaine Davis, she's just like phenomenal. I mean, that woman is pure energy, genius. Her vision, she knows exactly what she wants. Where she puts the camera tells the story. So everything came together perfectly, but organically, which is great. It wasn't too planned out. It was more like, just go with it, and then Casey and I found that kind of rhythm.
And because you were bringing up the directors on the show, did you find that, one of the benefits of having different directors come in for different episodes is the perspective that they can bring in, and the way that you get to have really intricate conversations about your character with people who are looking at it through a new lens and a different lens, and everybody kind of brings different ideas and perspectives in terms of the collaboration of who D is and how you're going to play him in scenes?
Yeah, what's interesting is everyone that meets you, they're like, I didn't think you're going to be like this. Well, I watched an episode and I was like, yeah, it's, it is what it is. But, and they get it, their vision of it, or their perspective of it, is very interesting. So I find it, intriguing, how they initiate sort of certain scenes or their ideas for certain things, because it adds to the character. They'll see little nuances, and they'll mention little things, and we'll work on, different approaches, different deliveries. And I think it's great. And they're all creative. They're all just wonderful.
Yeah. And jumping back to the scene where Naomi comes to Dee and starts asking him a bunch of questions, and he's really the person that's giving her this information for the first time. It's an interesting scene to watch play out between your characters, and in large part because your character has a lot of respect for her. He's not sugarcoating anything, he's not dancing around anything, so there's a lot of respect in that conversation. And at the same time, he's also giving her the space to digest things. He's not trying to overload her with information. It's, I'm answering the questions that you have, I'm not telling you more than you're asking for right now, even though there's about 10 million other things that we'll get to eventually. And was interested in how you wanted to play that scene with all of those dynamics between the two of them in mind.
Yeah, that was kind of like I called it the tightrope scene, because you had to walk on that tightrope, because you couldn't say too much, you couldn't play it too, and you also want to kind of be a little bit vague about it, in a sense where it's important for the audience to be like, well, what's he thinking? What's he saying? What is she thinking? Where is this going? Wait, what's going to happen? Wait, I got to watch the next episode. So that's the great part about that. And again, that goes back to the writing. The writing is just, it's great. It guides everything. And I think that's all about rhythm as well. It's very rhythmic, those scenes, because you go into it and literally everyone disappears when we're doing our stuff, Casey and I. So we get lost in it, which is great. And then, something's working, right?
And that idea that you were just saying about wanting the audience to be thinking about, what's he thinking, where's he coming from, what does he know? It feels like that really plays out in all of the scenes that we've seen so far in the series as well. Was that something that also kind of really fit in with the character for you, outside of it being a narrative point and keeping the audience engaged? Because kind of going back to that thing of, he's trying not to give too much information about himself away to other people around him. And so there really is an intentional mystique to him. And what are the interesting aspects in trying to play off of that and make sure that you're always keeping things a little bit hidden and a little bit guarded?
Well, that's what it is. It's just that, like you just said it, he's hidden and he's guarded, and he doesn't want to initiate any of this, because if he does, he knows what's going to happen, because he himself is in a situation. That's why he's hiding. So when Naomi comes, it's like, oh fuck, oh man, here we go. But it's almost like, I think this will kind of resonate throughout people's lives, because you have that kind of mentor in your life, people you look up to and you're kind of like scared to talk to, but then you finally do talk to them, and you realize that they're awesome people and they have a lot of experience and they help you, and also with the kid who you see has a lot of potential and they can go in any direction, and you say, hey, listen, I want to give you some advice about life, and you give it with your heart and you're very true about it, and it's guidance, it's good guidance. So that's kind of how that played out, because I think that's the only way to reform a person like that who's been through such carnage.
And because he's a character who is a little bit of a loner and is a little bit of an outsider, did you look at it as that's just because of where he is, the fact that he's kind of trying to hide out a little bit, or did you think that he's always just been someone who's just very naturally that way and always a little bit more on the outskirts?
Well, there's a lot to him too. I can't say too much, but there's a reason why he's hiding.
Yeah.
There's a lot to him. He's really, really tortured. So that's kind of why he doesn't want to talk to anybody, because he knows that if he does, it's going to just open up different cans of what, so he, there's a reason why he keeps to himself and just doesn't say anything. But then what he does when he commits to something, he's got a big heart. He really, he dives whole. He like loves Naomi and he cares about her and he protects her. So he wants to protect her and teach her and guide her. And, it's a, what's the word for it? It's, I don't know. He's just, he's a tortured guy, a tortured soul, I guess you could say, with a good intent.
And talking a little bit about his work as a tattoo artist and running the tattoo place, it's such a form of artistic expression. And so what did it say to you about him as a character, with the fact that that's what he's chosen to do with the time that he's spending hiding out in this particular place?
Yeah, I think that's part of his meditation. I think that's part of it's a way to kind of release, and it's like a therapy. The drawing and the sort of stillness of it all. It's like the Japanese writing therapy, so it's very similar to that.
And you were mentioning earlier the tattoos that he has as a character as himself, and I feel like we've only seen flickers and tiny details of them so far. You can tell that he's someone who's just completely covered head to toe. But obviously, tattoos are such a personal expression as well. And so once you started to see the designs that the makeup team had come up with, did that kind of key you into any details about him as well, just in terms of looking at what he's chosen to adorn and decorate his body with, design wise?
I love them. I think they're the best tattoos I've ever seen. I just think they're dope. I mean, when you see what they actually are, I don't know if I could talk about it too much, but they'll probably have some close-ups and stuff on when we shoot, but they're really, really cool. They tell a story about space, I guess. But I sent Ava a few pics and I'm like, these are awesome. And she's like, whoa, these are really cool. And then the next week it's like very similar to what we talked about.
That's so interesting.
And he has a tattoo on his neck too, which means a lot. And that comes up.
Really, really intrigued to see where we're going to learn details on all of those, because I'm sure they each tell a story. And I love that we've also gotten the chance already so early in the show to see the wings that extract. Did you get much of a chance to kind of see design-wise what they were coming up with in terms of that? Because I feel like it also kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier in terms of the poise and the movement of the character, that there's a specific kind of poise and movement to that moment when the wings come out, especially when you see, okay, they're made from metal from his home planet, and you just see the huge scope and size of them as well, and what that means to have something like that attached to your body.
Yeah, I think I saw a sketch or two, but it doesn't really hit you until you see it animated. And you're like, oh my God, I thought they were feathers. I thought, typical feathered wings. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay, whatever. But then when I saw like, they called inf metal, right? That's the metal that's from Thanagar. It's a very powerful metal, by the way, element. But when I saw them, I was blown away. I was like, yes.
And then I also wanted to ask a little bit about your training as an actor, because it sounds like you have actually a really extensive amount of training that you've done, from studying in Australia at the National Institute for Drama, to Columbia University, to the Lee Strasberg Institute. And I was just interested in terms of that artistic journey of diving so deep into training as an actor and really finding your voice and who you saw yourself as a performer in those early parts of your career.
So what I learned the most, like the most important thing that I learned is you can have all the training in the world, but if it's not digested properly and applied properly, it's worthless. And I learned everything, but my mind wasn't there when I was learning. I was just there to learn because I'm like, this is what I have to learn. And I got to learn this technique and this style and this class and this coach, this theater. And it was throughout the years. I was doing other things. I was doing 10,000 other things. It wasn't until I put my mind to it and focused and decided this is what I'm doing, because I got advice from somebody to just focus on that one thing, that literally within 6 months, I just started I was always working as an actor, and that's kind of how I paid my bills, which is pretty hard to do in LA. But it wasn't until I actually focused and started to really pick apart and digest the work. And that's when I became an actor. That's when I understood the craft of it and the artwork. And I know everyone always talks about it, but it's literally what it is. It's an art form. It's like sketching. It's like drawing. It's like, it's amazing. Once you get it, you're like, all right, I understand.
It's really, really fascinating and wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing all about that and talking all about Naomi. Very intrigued to see the rest of the season, and congratulations on the first couple of episodes. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.